Jake had always been a simple man, but today he stood among the most important guests at the grand diplomatic gala on Earth. His task, as a soldier, was to protect the dignitaries. But in his heart, Jake felt out of place. He wasn't like the fancy diplomats and officers dressed in sharp suits and elegant uniforms. He was just a soldier, someone who followed orders, kept to himself, stayed quiet. The hall was filled with laughter, music, and the clink of glasses. Humans from all over the galaxy mingled with delegates from various alien species. Their voices blended together in a hum of excitement as they discussed trade, alliances, and the future of intergalactic relations. Despite the glamour of the event, Jake kept his distance, serving from the edges of the room. He was standing near the balcony, staring out at the stars above Earth, when he noticed her. At first, he wasn't sure who she was. She was standing alone, her presence drawing attention without a single word. The other guests seemed to avoid her, giving her a wide berth as though they feared her. But there was something different about her. She wasn't just beautiful. She carried herself with an air of elegance and power that made everyone else seem small in comparison. The woman was tall, with silver blue skin that shimmered softly in the light of the room. Her long, flowing hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall of stars, glinting with every movement. Her eyes, a deep shade of violet, stared out into the distance, as though lost in thought. She was dressed in a gown that seemed to blend seamlessly with the night sky, dark and shimmering with tiny flecks of light. Like the stars themselves had woven the fabric. There was no mistaking it. She was no ordinary guest. Jake's curiosity got the better of him, and he found himself walking toward her, drawn by something he couldn't explain. As he approached, she turned her head, meeting his gaze. For a moment, neither of them spoke. There was an unspoken understanding in the air between them, something beyond mere words. Jake felt a strange connection, as if this moment was destined. "Is it not beautiful?" she asked, her voice soft but strong, carrying a weight that Jake couldn't ignore. Her tone wasn't asking about the view, it was a question about something deeper, something personal. Jake glanced out at the stars, then back at her. "Yes, it is," he said, surprised by the ease of the conversation. Most people at these events only ever talked about politics or business, but this woman, she felt different. "Earth's beauty has always been something that captivated me," she continued, her eyes never leaving the stars. "But sometimes I wonder if it's all for show, this peaceful life that you humans live. Does it ever make you question the things you're fighting for?" She tilted her head slightly as though she was truly curious. Jake wasn't sure what to say. He'd never really thought about it. His life had been filled with battles, missions, and following orders. But this woman, with her quiet strength and sharp gaze, made him realize something he hadn't before. He didn't even know her name, yet he felt like he had known her forever, before he could respond. She gave him a small smile, her lips curving into a gentle expression that was both sad and sincere. "You don't have to answer," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Only wondered, that's all." Jake stood in silence, not sure what to make of her words. There was something about her that was so unlike anyone he had ever met. Most people at these events were either focused on themselves or their business, but this woman, she had an air of mystery around her, something he couldn't put into words. "I'm sorry," Jake said, finally finding his voice. "I didn't mean to intrude. It's just, I've never met anyone quite like you." The woman's eyes met his again, and, for a moment, she seemed to study him, as though weighing his every word. "There are many things that separate us," she said softly. "I come from the Andromeda Empire. My people are not like yours. I was born into a life of privilege, expected to marry for power, not love. But every time I look at someone like you, someone who is so simple, I wish things could be different. I wish I could marry someone like you, human." Jake was taken aback. Marry? The beautiful alien princess? He couldn't even begin to understand the world she came from. And yet, the way she said it made his heart skip a beat. She didn't speak with the arrogance or pride that he expected from someone of her station. There was no mockery, no superiority, a deep, quiet longing that Jake couldn't ignore. Before he could gather his thoughts, she turned her gaze back to the stars, as if the moment had passed. I'm sorry, she said again, this time more softly. I shouldn't have said that. It's not possible for someone like me. ... Jake's mind raced. What was she trying to tell him? Why had she spoken so openly? Why for the first time did he feel like he understood her in a way he couldn't explain? You don't have to apologize, Jake said quickly, almost without thinking. I don't know what to say, but I'm glad you said it. The woman smiled again, a more genuine smile this time, one that reached her eyes. Perhaps it's better not to speak of it, she said, her tone becoming lighter. Let's just say I'm glad you understand. And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving Jake standing there, his mind spinning with 1,000 questions. What had just happened? Why did he feel this strange connection with someone so far out of his reach? His duty was to protect the guests, to remain focused on his task. But in that moment, Jake realized that his life had just changed forever. As the night continued, Jake couldn't help but glance back toward the stars and the woman who had made him question everything he knew about the universe and about himself. The days after the gala were a blur for Jake. He couldn't stop thinking about the beautiful alien princess, Lyra. Her soft words, her quiet longing, and the way she had looked at him like she saw something in him that no one else had ever noticed. It was all so confusing. Lyra was a princess from the Andromeda Empire, a woman who had lived a life full of rules and expectations. And yet, in the short time they had spent together, she had made him feel like they shared something that couldn't be explained by rank or status. Jake found it hard to concentrate on his duties. He went through the motions, standing guard, watching over the diplomats, but his mind kept wandering back to Lyra. What had she meant when she said she wished she could marry someone like him? She was a princess. She had the whole universe at her feet. Why would she ever think about a simple soldier like him? It didn't make sense. But the more Jake thought about it, the more he realized that there was something different about her. Lyra didn't act like the other aliens he had met. She wasn't cold or distant like most of the royal dignitaries he had encountered. She was human, in a way. She cared. And when she spoke to him, it felt as though she was speaking to someone who could understand her. One evening, after another long day of diplomatic meetings, Jake received an unexpected message. It was from Princess Lyra. She had requested to meet with him alone, away from the eyes of the other diplomats. His heart raced as he read the message. Was this a trap? Was she in trouble? Or worse, was she just playing with him? But despite the doubts, Jake couldn't ignore the pull he felt toward her. He had to see her again, even if it meant risking everything. He met her in a small, quiet courtyard outside the palace. The stars shone brightly above them, and the air was cool, a welcome relief from the warmth of the grand hall. Lyra stood at the far end of the courtyard, her back to him as she gazed up at the stars, just as she had at the gala. Her presence was as powerful as ever, yet there was a softness in the way she carried herself that made Jake feel at ease. As he walked closer, she turned to face him, a faint smile playing on her lips. I didn't think you would come, said, her voice warm but tinged with uncertainty. I wasn't sure I should, Jake replied, his voice low. But I couldn't stay away. Lyra nodded, as if she had expected that answer. I'm glad you came. She motioned for him to sit beside her, and Jake hesitated for only a moment before taking a seat on the stone bench next to her. They sat in silence for a moment, both looking up at the stars, lost in thought. I've been thinking about you, Lyra said after a long pause, her voice soft. I shouldn't have said what I did at the gala. It was ... foolish. Jake turned to look at her, surprised. Why do you say that? Lyra shook her head, her silver blue hair catching the light. Because it's impossible. I'm a princess. I have duties, obligations. I can't just marry anyone. I have to marry someone who can strengthen the Andromeda Empire, someone with power, someone who can help me maintain my position. Jake felt a pang in his chest. He knew she was right, but the words stung nonetheless. So you regret what you said? Lyra looked at him, her violet eyes searching his face. No, I don't regret it. I just ... She paused, struggling to find the right words. I wish it were different. I wish I could choose. I wish I could choose you, Jake. Jake felt his heart race. He didn't know what to say. He had never imagined that he would be the one to make a princess question her future, much less her entire life. But the truth was, he didn't know how to handle this situation. He was a soldier, someone who followed orders. He wasn't a diplomat or a nobleman. He was a simple man with nothing to offer her but his heart. And yet, somehow, that was enough for her. "I don't know what to say," Jake admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "You're a princess. You have everything: power, wealth, a whole galaxy at your feet. What could someone like me offer you?" Lyra turned to him, her expression serious. "I don't want wealth, Jake. I don't want power. I don't even want the galaxy. I want someone who understands me. Someone who sees me for who I really am. Not just a princess, not just a tool for political gain. Someone who can look at me and see a person. That's what I want." Jake was quiet for a moment, his mind racing. He could feel the weight of her words settling into his heart. He wanted to say something, anything that could make this situation better. But the truth was, there was no easy answer. The reality was that they were from two different worlds, two different lives. She had responsibilities that he couldn't even begin to understand. And he had nothing to offer her but his presence. "I don't know if this can work," Jake said finally, his voice heavy. "We're from different worlds, Lyra. You have a whole empire to rule. I'm just a soldier. I don't think I'm the kind of man you need." Lyra's eyes softened. "Maybe you're not the kind of man I'm supposed to need, but you're the kind I want." She paused, her gaze lingering on him. "I know it's complicated, but I had to tell you how I feel. I couldn't keep it inside any longer." Jake took a deep breath. He didn't have the answers. He didn't even know what the right choice was. But for now, in this quiet moment, under the stars, he felt something he had never felt before. Hope. "I don't know what the future holds," Jake said quietly, "but I'm willing to find out with you. Whatever it is, I want to be a part of it." Lyra smiled, a soft and genuine smile that made Jake's heart skip a beat. "Then let's see where this goes, Jake. One step at a time." As they sat together in silence, the stars above them seemed to shine even brighter. For the first time, Jake felt like he had a place in this galaxy, a place with Lyra, no matter the obstacles that lay ahead. Over the next few weeks, Jake found himself torn between his duties as a soldier and his growing feelings for Princess Lyra. His thoughts were constantly occupied by her. And every time they spoke, it felt like the weight of the galaxy shifted. Just slightly. What started as a chance encounter had blossomed into something that neither of them could ignore. The more they spent time together, the more Jake realized how deeply he had come to care for her. But the question remained, could their bond survive the demands of their worlds? The diplomatic gala had been just the beginning. Jake and Lyra found secret moments to meet, always away from prying eyes. Sometimes it was in the palace gardens, where they could talk without the weight of royal protocol hanging over them. Times, they stole moments in the quiet hallways of the royal palace, hidden from the watchful eyes of Lyra's guards and the diplomats who would never understand. Jake had never known how much he needed someone like Lyra in his life until he met her. She was different from anyone he had ever known, strong, intelligent, and yet vulnerable in ways that surprised him. Beneath the poise and beauty of a royal princess, Lyra was a woman caught in a world of expectations she didn't want. Spoke openly about the pressures she faced. The constant pressure to marry someone of high rank, someone who could solidify the Empire's alliances. But with Jake, she felt like she could be herself. She didn't have to pretend they were worlds apart, yet the more they talked, the more they realized how much they shared. They both understood what it felt like to be trapped by the expectations of others. Lyra's life was dictated by her royal duties, and Jake's was controlled by the orders of his commanders. But when they were together, they were just two people, trying to find their way in a universe that often didn't care about their dreams. One evening, as they walked through a secluded garden in the palace, Lyra spoke of her upcoming marriage arrangement. The weight in her voice was unmistakable. Jake could see the struggle in her eyes. "They've arranged it," she said softly, her fingers brushing the petals of a blooming flower. The ceremony will be held in just a few weeks. My parents have chosen a prince from the Zorothian system. He's powerful, but he doesn't understand me. He only sees me as a pawn in his game for control. He doesn't see me as a person. Jake felt a sharp pang in his chest. He had known this was coming, but hearing her say it out loud made the reality of their situation even clearer. He had no place in her world. He was just a soldier, someone who had never been part of the elite circles she had to navigate. Yet despite everything, he couldn't deny the pull he felt toward her. She had opened up to him in ways no one ever had, and in return, he had shared parts of himself he never thought he would. "I'm sorry, Lyra," Jake said, his voice low and sincere. "I wish I could change things for you. Can't stand the thought of you being forced into something you don't want." Lyra smiled faintly, but there was no humor in it. "You can't change anything, Jake. But I appreciate you saying that. It's just the way things are. I'm a princess. I'm expected to do what's best for the Empire, for my people." They stood there for a long moment, the weight of the silence pressing down on them. Jake wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but he knew that doing so would only complicate things even more. They were on borrowed time, and every second they spent together felt like it was slipping through their fingers as the days went by. Their secret meetings became more frequent. Each time they met, they spoke less of politics and more of their hopes and fears. Lyra told Jake about her dreams of a different life, one where she could choose her own path, where she didn't have to carry the weight of an entire empire on her shoulders. Jake shared his own thoughts about the simple life he longed for, one where he could settle down, away from the war, the constant conflict, and the endless duty. "I never thought I'd find someone like you, Jake," Lyra said one evening. As they walked along a quiet hallway, hidden from the rest of the palace, "Someone who sees me for who I really am. I've spent my whole life pretending to be what everyone expects me to be. But with you, I don't have to pretend." Jake looked at her, his heart swelling with emotion. "I see you, Lyra. I see the person you really are, and that's who I care about." There was a long pause, and for a moment, the only sound was the soft rustle of her dress as she moved beside him. Then she turned to face him. Her violet eyes filled with something Jake couldn't quite name. "I wish things could be different," she said softly. "I wish I could choose you, Jake, but it's not that simple. I have a duty to my people, to my family, and you. You have your own life, your own responsibilities. Can't just throw all that away." Jake's heart sank, but he understood. Lyra had responsibilities, and he had his own. Their worlds were too different, their paths too far apart. But despite everything, he couldn't help but feel that there was something undeniable between them, something worth fighting for. "I know it's complicated," Jake said, his voice steady, "but I'm willing to fight for this. I'm willing to fight for you, Lyra, even if it's not easy. Even if it means facing impossible odds. I want to be with you." Lyra looked at him for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she reached out and placed a hand on his arm. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't know how much that means to me." The moment stretched between them, charged with emotion and unspoken promises. They both knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in a long while, they felt like they weren't alone. They had each other, and that was enough to give them hope, even in the face of everything that seemed impossible, as they stood there in the quiet of the palace hallway. The universe seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them, bound together by something that neither of them could fully understand, but both of them knew was real. Jake's life had always been full of clear lines, duty, orders, and missions. But since meeting Lyra, those lines had become blurry. Every time they spoke, every time they shared a quiet moment together, Jake felt more and more pulled into a world that wasn't his. He tried to ignore it, tried to stay focused on his responsibilities. But the connection between him and Lyra was undeniable. As the days passed, their secret meetings became more difficult to arrange. Lyra's guards grew more vigilant, and the palace buzzed with preparations for her upcoming wedding. Jake could see the strain in her eyes. The closer the ceremony got, the more distant and tired she became. She spent more time locked away in her rooms, away from the public eye, and Jake could sense the weight she was carrying. It wasn't just the upcoming marriage, it was the life she was being forced into. One evening, after a particularly long, intense diplomatic session, Jake received a message from Lyra. His heart skipped when he saw her name on the screen. She asked him to meet her at a secluded spot in the palace gardens, a place they had gone to before. It was their special place. A quiet corner of the gardens where they could talk away from the prying eyes of the palace staff. Jake didn't hesitate. He left his post and made his way to the gardens, his heart racing. When he arrived, he found Lyra standing near a fountain, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She didn't turn to greet him when he approached, but he could tell something was wrong. Her shoulders were tense, her body language closed off. He could feel the heaviness in the air before she even spoke. "I have to tell you something," Lyra said, her voice barely above a whisper. She still hadn't turned to face him, and Jake could hear the anxiety in her words. "What is it, Lyra?" Jake asked, his voice gentle. He stepped closer to her, unsure of what was coming. She finally turned to face him, and her eyes were filled with a mix of fear and sadness. "They know about us, Jake," she said quietly. "Someone saw us talking the other night in the hallway. Someone who doesn't care about what happens to me. Someone who only wants to use me to their advantage." Jake's stomach sank. Who? Who saw us?" Lyra shook her head, looking down at the ground. "I don't know, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that the royal family knows. They know about us, and they won't allow it." Jake's mind raced. "Lyra, we can't let this stop us. Can't just—" "I have no choice, Jake," Lyra interrupted, her voice cracking. "They're forcing me into this marriage. Ceremony is set for next week, and I can't stop it. My family is already making arrangements. If I refuse, there will be consequences. For me, for my people." Jake took a step back, his heart breaking for her. He had known that this day might come, but hearing her say it out loud made it all too real. He wanted to fight for her, wanted to take her away from all of this, but he knew the risks. They were both trapped in systems that didn't allow for happiness, for freedom. "I'm sorry, Jake," Lyra continued, her voice full of regret. "I wanted to be with you, I truly did. But this isn't just about me. It's about the future of my people. If I defy them, everything could fall apart." Jake looked at her, his chest tight. The woman he had come to care for more than he had ever imagined was being forced to choose between her love for him and her duty to her empire. The pressure, the weight of responsibility that had been placed on her shoulders, was something Jake could never truly understand. "I wish I could change it," Jake said, his voice low. "I wish I could fix this for you, but I can't. You have to do what you think is best. But know this, Lyra, whatever happens, I'll always be here. I'll always care about you." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away, quickly, as though not wanting to show weakness. "I don't know what to do, Jake. I don't want to marry him. I don't want to be forced into this life." Jake reached out, his hand gently resting on her arm. "Then don't. You don't have to go through with this. There has to be a way. There has to be something we can do." She looked at him, her expression torn. "I wish it were that easy. But you don't understand, Jake. If I don't follow through with this marriage, it will tear apart everything. The empire will crumble, and millions of people will suffer." For the first time, Jake saw the weight of her royal duties for what they truly were. It wasn't just about power or politics. It was about the lives of millions. Lyra was trapped in a cage of her own making. There was no easy way out. "I'm not asking you to sacrifice everything for me, Lyra," Jake said softly. "But don't forget that you deserve to be happy too. You don't have to be a prisoner to your crown." Lyra wiped away a tear and nodded slowly. "I know, but the choice isn't just mine to make." She paused, her gaze distant. "I'm sorry, Jake, I really am. But I think we both knew this wasn't going to be easy." Jake's heart ached as he realized how helpless they both were. No matter how much they cared for each other, no matter how much they wanted to be together, the world around them was too powerful, too unforgiving. "Maybe it's just not meant to be," Jake said quietly, his voice barely audible. "But that doesn't mean I'll forget you, Lyra. I'll never forget you." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the gentle trickle of water from the fountain, a reminder of the peaceful world outside the chaos they were living in. But even in this quiet moment, both Jake and Lyra knew that their time together was running out. The future was uncertain, and the choices they made now would have lasting consequences. As Jake turned to leave, he glanced back one last time at the woman who had changed his life forever. Lyra stood there, watching him go, her heart heavy with the weight of duty and the love she couldn't act on. The days that followed were some of the hardest Jake had ever known. He couldn't stop thinking about Lyra, about the woman he had come to care for more than anyone in his life. He had always believed that duty came first, that he was meant to follow orders and do his part. But when it came to Lyra, everything had changed. The thought of her marrying someone she didn't love, someone who didn't see her the way Jake did, filled him with a sense of helplessness he hadn't known before. Lyra's marriage ceremony was quickly approaching, and Jake could feel the walls closing in on both of them. He tried to stay away, to focus on his duties as a soldier, but every moment spent apart from her only made the desire to be with her stronger. He knew that time was running out. If he didn't do something soon, he would lose her forever. One evening, after a tense day of meetings and royal preparations, Jake sat in his quarters, staring out of the window. His mind raced with thoughts of how to stop this. He had to find a way to get Lyra out of the palace, away from the Empire, and away from the marriage that was being forced on her. But how? She was trapped in a gilded cage, and the keys were locked away in the hands of those who had no compassion for her feelings. Suddenly, a voice broke through his thoughts. Jake. He spun around, his heart racing, as he saw Lyra standing in the doorway of his quarters. She had come to him, and he hadn't expected it. She looked more tired than usual, her eyes heavy with worry. But there was something else in her expression. That gave him hope. What's wrong? Jake asked, standing quickly to meet her. His heart was pounding in his chest. I've made a decision, Lyra said, her voice firm but laced with fear. I can't do this anymore, Jake. I can't go through with the wedding. I can't marry someone I don't love, someone who only sees me as a means to an end. I want to be with you. Jake's heart leaped into his throat. You want to run away? But how? They'll come after us. They'll hunt us down. The Empire won't let you just walk away. Lyra nodded, her eyes filled with determination. I know, but I've thought about it, Jake. I can't stay here, locked away in this life. I've made arrangements. I've already planned an escape. I just need you to help me. Jake's mind raced. He'd never considered the idea of running, of leaving everything behind. But now, with Lyra standing before him, asking for his help, it seemed like the only option. He had always believed in doing what was right, and helping Lyra meant standing up for what they both deserved, a chance at happiness, no matter the cost. How can I help? Jake asked, his voice steady with resolve. I've arranged for us to leave tonight, Lyra said, her voice low. I've hidden a ship in the lower hangar. It's small, and it's unmarked, so it won't draw attention. We can use it to escape the palace, and once we're away, we'll head to a safe planet. Oh. No one will know where we are. Jake felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. This was their chance. But there was a risk. He couldn't just walk out of the palace without being noticed. They needed to plan something to keep the guards from discovering their escape. Lyra had already taken steps to ensure their getaway, but Jake knew it wasn't going to be easy. Do you have a way to get past the guards? Jake asked, already preparing for the worst. Lyra smiled, though it was a tired, strained smile. Thought of that too. I have a way to disable the security systems temporarily. It will give us enough time to slip past the patrols and reach the hangar. Jake nodded, his mind working quickly. All right, we do this together. We don't stop, no matter what happens. Lyra stepped closer to him, her hand reaching out. To touch his arm. Thank you, Jake. I don't know what I would do without you. Jake placed his hand over hers, squeezing gently. You don't have to thank me. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. And because... Because... I care about you more than I ever thought possible. There was a long pause as they stood there, their hands touching, hearts racing. In that moment, everything seemed clear. They had made their choice. They were going to fight for their love, no matter what it took. The clock ticked on, and soon, it was time. Lyra led Jake through the hidden corridors of the palace, her steps light but purposeful. They moved quickly, sticking to the shadows, avoiding the guards and security cameras. Every step felt like a step toward freedom, toward a future they could build together. When they reached the lower hangar, Jake's heart was pounding in his chest, could hear the hum of the ship's engines ready for takeoff. Lyra entered. The codes she had prepared, and the door to the hangar slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the ship sat waiting for them, small, sleek, and ready for escape. Jake followed Lyra onto the ship, his mind still racing with everything that had happened. They were moments away from leaving the palace, from starting a new life. It was everything they had dreamed of, but it wasn't going to be easy. They had no idea what awaited them beyond the stars. But as Lyra sat at the controls, her eyes focused on the task ahead. Jake knew one thing for sure: he would follow her anywhere. With a final glance at the palace they were leaving behind, Lyra pressed the launch button. The ship's engines roared to life, and within seconds, they were soaring into the night sky. The palace, the empire, the life they had known, everything was left behind as they ventured into the unknown. Together, the stars stretched out before them, vast and endless. Lyra sat at the controls, her hands steady, guiding the ship through the dark expanse of space. Jake sat beside her, his mind still racing. They had escaped. They were free for now. But he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of uncertainty. Their future was unknown, and there was no way to predict what would happen next. But one thing was certain: they had made the choice to be together, to take control of their own lives, no matter the cost. The ship hummed softly as they made their way farther from the planet. Lyra had said they were heading to a safe planet, a place where they could hide from the reach of the Empire. It was a small, uninhabited world on the outer edges of the galaxy. It wouldn't be easy to find, and Lyra had made sure to cover their tracks. "How are you holding up?" Jake asked, breaking the silence. He glanced at Lyra, noticing the tiredness in her eyes. He knew she had been through a lot: the pressure, the escape, and the weight of her responsibilities. But now, as they flew into the unknown, she seemed to be carrying a different kind of weight, the weight of freedom. Lyra looked over at him, her expression softening. "I'm not sure, Jake. Part of me is relieved, but another part of me, well, it's scared. We don't know what we're heading into. I've never been this far from everything I've known." Jake nodded, understanding her fear. "I know, but we're doing this together. We'll figure it out, one step at a time." For a long while they were silent again, the only sound being the hum of the ship. The universe around them was vast, and the loneliness of space seemed to stretch on forever. But with Lyra by his side, Jake didn't feel alone. Felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. After what felt like hours, Lyra broke the silence again. "Jake, I've been thinking this isn't just about us. We're not the only ones who've been living under pressure, living in a system that doesn't care about what we want.
Oh.
There are others out there, people who are trapped just like I was. If we're going to start a new life, I want to do more than just hide. I want to help those who need it too." Jake looked at her, surprised. Help others? But how? Lyra's eyes sparkled with a sense of purpose. "We've already made one impossible choice. Why not make another? We could help create a safe place for people who are oppressed, who have nowhere else to turn. A place where they can be free, just like we're trying to be." Jake was quiet for a moment, the idea sinking in. It wasn't an easy decision, but the more he thought about it, the more it felt right. He had always believed in protecting people, in doing what was right. If they could build something that could help others, something that would give people a chance at a better life, it would make everything they had gone through worth it. "That sounds big," Jake said slowly, considering the weight of it. "But it also sounds like something worth fighting for. We could make a real difference." Smiled, a soft, hopeful smile. "We could. It won't be easy, but we have each other. That's a start." The ship's computer chimed, breaking the moment. Lyra quickly tapped a few buttons, checking their position. They were getting closer to their destination. "We'll be there soon," she said, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and nervousness. "It's a small planet, mostly forgotten by the galaxy. No one will look for us there. It's the perfect place to start over." Jake's heart skipped a beat as the reality of their new life began to settle in. They were about to land on a foreign planet, far from everything they had known. There would be no more palace walls, no more empire, no more royal duties. But it wasn't just about escaping. It was about building something new, something that could change the galaxy in ways they never imagined. As the ship descended into the planet's atmosphere, Jake looked out the window. The planet was barren, its surface covered in rocky terrain and vast empty deserts. Didn't look like much from the outside, but to Jake, it felt like a new beginning. A blank canvas where they could paint their own future. The ship touched down with a soft thud, and for the first time since they had left the palace, Jake allowed himself to breathe deeply. They were safe. For now, Lyra turned to him, her face alight with a mixture of relief and excitement. "We're here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now we start." Jake stood, offering her a hand. She took it without hesitation, and together, they walked toward the exit of the ship. They stepped into the unknown, but neither of them was afraid. They had each other, and that was enough. Outside, the air was dry and still, but it was different. It wasn't the suffocating pressure of the palace or the cold, distant rules of the empire. It was freedom. Lyra looked around at the barren landscape, her eyes full of wonder. "This is it, our new home." Jake smiled, his heart swelling with hope. Yeah, our new home. And for the first time in a long time, they didn't feel lost. They felt like they were exactly where they were meant to be. Together, they walked into the unknown, ready to build a new life, to create something bigger than themselves. They had each other, and that was all they needed to start their journey.